A few people were already familiar with Forge. But what I needed was a tipping point, which came from an unexpected source. A lady called Natalie Haynes. Natalie was the procurement manager for a medium-sized agricultural supply chain where I had previously worked. She was outspoken, aggressive, and resistant to corporate crap. We had a disagreement once over a late shipment, but we settled it properly, which she respected. She phoned me out of the blue. "I heard you weren't dead," she said. "Not yet," I said. "Trying to stay that way." "I have an issue," she added. "Your brother promised me a 3-day turnaround for animal feed supplies. I took 6. Then he had the audacity to propose that we adjust our expectations since he was altering the paradigm." "What exactly does that mean?" "It implies he's drowning," I explained. "And he's pretending it's performance art." She laughed. "Then without hesitation, email me your pricing. If you can promise delivery in 5 days or less, you've got our business." That was the crack that I needed. I put everything I had into delivering for her, nailing every delivery, sending regular check-ins and personalized updates. Natalie was impressed and had pals. Within 3 weeks, 3 of her industry connections called out. All of them told similar stories. Everyone was eager for something better. Word began to circulate. Brandon did not notice at first. He was too busy posting encouraging quotations on LinkedIn about rising from the ashes and organizing corporate ping-pong games. But Dad noticed. I know this because he called me out of nowhere. "Jack," he said, speaking carefully. "I hear you are working with several of our clients." "They're not your clientele," I explained quietly. "They are clients. They go where the service is." There was a pause. "You understand this is not a game. You're burning bridges." "No," I responded. "You did it when you selected a slogan on a sweatshirt above the person who constructed your foundation." He exhaled. "I never intended it to be this way." "Then you should not have lighted the match." I hung up, then accelerated. I put up a new client portal, recruited another assistant, paid my drivers above market rates, and treated them as partners rather than cogs. The final part of my setup is visibility. I contacted a local business podcast that I was familiar with. They owed me a favor for a guest speaker appearance I made 2 years ago. I presented them a narrative about a son who left his family company to start his own. They loved it. We taped the episode in a single take. I didn't mention any names. I did not disparage anyone. I just told the truth. Loyalty is not always reciprocal. How leadership is earned rather than given. How vision is meaningless without implementation. The program aired the next week. By the following Monday, my inbox had received 70 fresh queries. Brandon's firm experienced its worst quarter in 6 years. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because all of this, all of the expansion, planning and leverage, was only the beginning. The big move was about to happen. And this time, it wasn't for business. It was personal. It happened on a Tuesday, and it was not an accident I selected that day on purpose. It was midweek, calm, and came immediately before my father's company's quarterly review meeting. The exact type of meeting I used to run. Brandon once failed to arrange a meeting until 15 minutes before it began, which he blamed on an email filter issue. It had been 8 months since I walked out of that office with nothing but pride and a resounding quiet in my chest. 8 months of starting from zero, watching Brandon bumble his way through my former role, burning bridges quicker than he could build them. Dad stood behind him, arms folded like everything was okay. But suddenly something was extremely wrong. Forge Logistics had burst. We were no longer the scrappy underdogs, we were the genuine deal. 20 clients, a warehouse lease in the works, 2 modest delivery fleets under contract, a devoted team of dispatchers and planners, and a reputation we did not promote. We did not need to. Our work speaks for itself. Brandon's firm, which was owned by his father, was bleeding. They had lost about half of their long-term contracts. 2 important investors had backed out. Their driver retention was the lowest it had ever been, and their books were disorganized. Brandon couldn't fathom the convoluted web of overlapping vendor agreements, variable payment conditions, and sloppy invoicing. They were vulnerable, but I didn't want to kick them while they were down. Not in an apparent way. I preferred something more lyrical. So I asked my dad to lunch. He was astonished to hear from me. I did not anticipate this. He stated this when we sat down at the same Greek restaurant where we'd previously had dozens of meals and where he told me I'd had enough. "I thought we should talk," I remarked nonchalantly, biting into my euro. "You know, see how things are going," he said softly. "Brandon has been adjusting." I did not react. I flashed him a tight-lipped smile. He looked up. "I've heard about Forge. You are doing great." "Better than well," I answered. "We are growing." He shifted uneasily. I could see it in his eyes. The creeping awareness that I was not here to recollect. I was there to show him I wanted to provide something. When I mentioned a way out, he raised an eyebrow. "A road out of what?" "Your mess," I replied bluntly. "You lost more than $1.5 million in contracts this quarter. Your investors are nervous. Your employee churn is hurting you. Operational consistency. And Brandon is not a leader. He is a liability." His jaw tensed, but he did not interrupt. "I am willing to buy out 2 of your largest remaining accounts. They have already approached me, by the way. They simply didn't want to jump without knowing how clean the split would be. I'll make it as painless and generous as possible. You can take the cash and rearrange what remains, whether to rebrand or not. It doesn't matter to me. You're trying to gut us, he remarked quietly. No, I responded. I'm giving you a chance to save anything because if I wanted to gut you, I'd simply let Brandon continue. We sat silently for a moment. My father looked at me, actually looked at me, and for the first time, I noticed something in his expression that was not arrogance or contempt. I saw dread, but he was not prepared to accept defeat. Not yet. I'll talk to Brandon, he responded stiffly. We will take your offer into consideration, I said, nodding. Do that, but I already knew he wouldn't. So I prepared for the final push. It started with the leak. I forwarded the materials Marco had provided me, including the damning email chains, transaction logs, and audio recordings, to one of the remaining investors, but not anonymously. I signed my name and added a cover letter in which I gently expressed my worries about mismanagement, incompetence, and ethical red flags that jeopardize not just operational success, but also legal stability. The investor replied within hours. Thank you for your transparency, he wrote. We will perform an internal audit promptly.